Hi, this is Ed in San Diego, and welcome back, as you can see, to Global TV Talk Show. And our very special guest today is in Austin, Texas, Rebecca Stevens. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hi, Ed. Thanks for having me today.
That's just great to have you. Okay, now we're going to be talking about global mobility and the business itself and some changes that are going on, including your change right now. So you're after what, 20 more than 20 years as a full-time employee, corporate employee, you're now building a consultancy.
Yeah, I have had a lot of fun with a couple of clients recently, Ed, and I just feel like I have so much to offer in so much of the mobility space. As much as I have loved building and running programs, pretty big programs in the
Yeah.
space, I like helping people get their programs started correctly and get that foundation built.
So there's so many stakeholders, and the move
Mhm.
afoot is to consolidate. So there's not so many people contacting or needing to contact the transferee and bothering them at different hours of the day and different things and taking up time and energy and creating some anxiety, I'm hearing. So what is the solution? A merger and acquisition, or just some kind of an organization to funnel things better? I don't know what I'm saying, but
Yeah.
the
Well,
idea is confusing, so it must be confusing to others, not just me.
yeah, so I think there's always been feedback from employees. Why do I have to talk to so many people? Why do I have to talk to a tax person? Why do I have to talk to a household goods mover? Why do I have to talk to whoever, right? And I think there's always going to be an element of that, Ed, for the employee because they know their schedule, they know what their needs are, and every individual's mobility needs are going to be different. I think from a corporate standpoint, I'm seeing a lot of consolidation of where mobility sits in an organization and who actually leads the mobility function. And I'm seeing more um, more combined titles, if you will. So when I see these job postings out there these days, I'm seeing a lot of global mobility and compensation or global mobility and benefits mixed together, which I think some people might have those skill sets, but those are so specific that I am still a believer that depending on the size of your program, you may still need a global mobility leader and a benefits leader or global mobility rolling into that senior benefits leader. So, all kinds of stuff going on.
So let me ask you, isn't that the role of an HR business partner?
I like to say global mobility people are HR business partners um, on steroids. So we do that influencing, we do the coordinating, we do the problem solving, the strategy that, let's say, an HR business partner would do, but we're doing it not only for their business, but around the globe. Where a lot of times you'll see HR business partners very focused on their region because of the employment laws that are in that location. If you think about it, your global mobility professionals are doing that around the globe. We have to have some working knowledge of employment law, of compensation, of obviously immigration law in all the countries where we're working. And we are the connectors. We connect tax with payroll, with benefits, with legal. I mean, name a department in a business, and your global mobility department has probably touched and been the connector of two departments or two different stakeholders.
So let's talk about small versus others. So
Okay.
let's just say a company has a uh, not a big program because there's not a lot of employees that they send out.
Yeah, I feel bad for those programs, not feel bad for them, but I think they're have sometimes more challenges, right? Because they may have one HR professional doing it all. And you really need to watch your program and say, okay, if you have a couple people on work authorizations, or you're okay sending one person or relocating someone on a lump sum, you're probably okay keeping that in HR with an HR person. But at a certain point, especially to be compliant, you need to think about, okay, do we have a foundation built for immigration and relocation? And by foundation, I mean, do we have providers or service partners that can help in those spaces? Do we have collateral? Do we have step-by-step directions for those HR business partners or that one HR person to follow so that they know, hey, I have someone who needs work authorization. What do I need to do? What are those steps? I feel like that's something that I've gone in for a couple of clients lately and built so that they don't need a me or a single full-time employee running their mobility program because it's not big enough, but that they have that foundation so that when they do have one come up, they can either call me or they can follow those directions that I've put together for them. And I just think it's imperative to build that foundation appropriately. You can get to a point in a compliant space, and I don't like to be the police when it comes to being a global mobility professional, but I think we do need to set up our businesses for success and not set them up later to have big fines or to lose work authorization in with an employee who has a skill set that they really need. So I've gone into programs where I've managed those programs before where there's a lot of cleanup. And I like to see those small programs built correctly so that there's not cleanup later for the employee or for the company.
Let's talk about flex and remote.
Mhm.
I mean, that's not going away. It's going to grow, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think if you think about it, flex and remote working has been around pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. And what that looked like before was maybe once a quarter, you'd have an employee come to you and say, my parents are getting older. I live in Texas. I want to go take care of them in Tennessee. Can I keep my job? Or my parents have a house in Italy. I wish they did. They don't. But I want to go work from Italy for the summer. And, can I do that? So prior to the pandemic, we had those situations and we had to problem solve for them one at a time. Well, now we're looking at that across the board for a lot of people. So there's so much to talk about when it comes to flex and remote working. And I just like to break that down into definitions.
Let's do
Um,
that. Yeah, let's go.
yeah. Okay. So, number one, you've got work from home. What that means to me is you're working from home in the city, state, province, or country where you were hired. That means I can drive into the office if I need to for a meeting. It just means I am working from a home desk instead of an office. Then you get into employee employee asked relocations or temporary work situations. So if we talk about temporary, it's can I work across a border for a temporary amount of time? What is your company's position around that? Is that can I work in another state? Can I work in another country for up to 4 to 6 weeks? Maybe. I don't know what the company would say or what your company culture is for that, but do I have the right to work in that location? And does the company have the right to pay me from that location? What is my company's risk tolerance? Right to work, for someone who might not know, would be, am I a citizen of that country or do I have work authorization or a visa to be able to do that? And so there's a lot of things to think about in that space. Then there is, hey, I just want to work from a country where my computer works. What does a company have to think about there? Again, right to work is important. Is the company set up to pay payroll or do they have a legal entity in that country? Um, if not, then a company has to think about, is this person making decisions and is this person a skill set or key talent that I have to have no matter where they work. So, me as a global mobility professional, a company is not going to say, oh my gosh, we need to keep Rebecca and we have to have her wherever she wants to keep her happy. But I did a recent consulting gig for an AI startup, and they are literally hiring the one person in the world that has the skill set that they need. And let's say that person's in a country where they don't have a legal entity. Then we've all heard of EORs or employee of records. You that in specific hire may warrant the expense of an EOR to make sure that you can hire that person and they can truly work remotely where the company doesn't have an entity. So there's so many layers and so many levels of flex and remote working. If you have questions, call me, but I could talk about this all day long.
So that's very interesting. On a larger scale, we're doing a program in New York, live program. Portions of that will be virtual, recorded as well, um, featuring EOR and the GEC, Global Employment Company, which is
Okay.
a very large scale, complicated, but 100% compliant across many borders because of the centralization that comes with that stuff. Now,
Mhm.
that's the extent of my knowledge. So I have an expert coming to be the speaker.
I will
And
watch for that.
yeah, and we have someone who um, you might be interested in tuning into a talk show recording that I'll be doing with him.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll connect you with that idea later.
Oh,
Let,
great.
so let's talk about a larger enterprise. Now, the company that you've just retired from is a larger
Yeah.
player. Do you want to identify that?
Um, so I was at Indeed, and we had a bigger program, mid-sized to large, I guess. So we probably supported around 2,000 employees a year, um, in everything from immigration, relocation, assignments. If you add flex working and internships onto that, maybe closer to 3,000 people that we supported on an ongoing basis.
So, to what extent did you use AI, or just a lot of people?
Oh,
That sounds like a handful of work.
Um, so so that company, we did not use AI. We were just starting to think about it. So the AI startup that I recently consulted with, it was pretty interesting because they wanted us to use AI as much as possible. One of the things where I used AI was I went in and put parameters in for, say, the relocation policy and the immigration policy, and it spit out what I would consider pretty good policies. And so instead of me spending a couple hours writing these policies, I got to spend that same time editing. And so I feel like I got to a much better product or policy faster with AI than I would have before. Um, someone had a question the other day. It's about AI and how can we use AI in mobility? Are the ways that we're currently using it really just to help people, not necessarily the mobility industry? And when I say that, like how to use it in translating, we've been using some AI technology in translations for a while, but that serves a greater purpose, not just a mobility purpose. I see AI helping mobility in the future once you build your, everybody's talking about an ecosystem where you have the APIs with all of your data funneling into one ecosystem of data. Once you have that data lake, I think we're going to be able to use AI in forecasting and looking at past trends and future trends in mobility where we couldn't before. I think trending and how many people are we going to hire this year that need relocation and need immigration is, it's always been a black hole. And I'm wondering, once we have all our data in one place and have a few years of data in place, can we use that to forecast? I don't know, but I'd like to think that we can and that it will be better than what we can do today.
So let's shift now, and this is really interesting. We're doing a program on AI,
Mhm.
and we have an expert who will lead that discussion, but and a lot of people. Perhaps you want to join that discussion too. I'll let you know when that will be. Uh, so AI can work for people and companies who are trained first in what AI is and what it's not.
Sure.
And so that can be helpful to AI. So
You're
AI
right.
can be helpful to people who are trained to be helpful to AI. Get
Yeah.
that? Whoa.
Yeah. And, we've always heard um, crap in, crap out, right? So it's what's being fed in and what's the knowledge that is going into that system will dictate what is coming out of that system and if it's going to be good or not.
So let's talk about SMBs, which is small, medium
Mhm.
sized business. And now they have an opportunity for growth and hiring people. They may work in office, they may work somewhere else, but they don't know finger from their elbow
Okay.
about what's involved, including the complexity. And because of that, they don't know what they're in for.
Okay. When it comes to mobility.
Right. And managing somebody like you who
Mhm.
has been hired or maybe hired to be the
Got it.
consultant in charge or whatever.
Mhm.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Help me through that.
Yeah, so when we're thinking about small, medium businesses, it kind of goes back to what I said before, Ed, where these companies don't have enough of a need or enough volume when it comes to immigration and relo to hire someone full time. And it usually falls on their HR business partner or HR leader to do it all. And do it all means helping someone get work authorization, working with that finding a law firm to help them, maybe finding a relo company to help them, finding a tax provider to help them. So I think where someone like a consultant like me can come in and help from soup to nuts and start maybe with policy. What's the company culture? What are you trying to achieve by sponsoring work authorizations? What are you trying to do with your talent management in that space? So build a policy, build some pretty simple to follow processes, and also maybe engage and help negotiate contracts for an immigration firm or provider, as well with a relocation company that might be able to help with that day to day once they need to get work authorization or relocate or put someone on assignment. It's just, again, building that foundation and building those processes that are easy to follow that can be handed over to someone in HR to follow until the program grows to where they need to hire an in-house specialist or manager to manage that volume of work.
So this is the kind of thing that you're experiencing yourself right now, is that
Correct.
because you've left the corporate shell, and
Yeah.
yet there are companies who don't know what to do and they know they need to
Right.
do something. And so you have a multitask situation then.
Yeah, it's all inclusive. It's let's take 25 years of experience running programs and seeing the places where companies might be out of compliance. And global mobility doesn't have to be scary, right? There's tax compliance and there's immigration compliance and some employee legal compliance in the locations where you do business. But it doesn't have to be scary if you set things up appropriately. Where it gets scary is if you don't set things up appropriately. You don't, I mean, again, not to scare everybody, but what does that mean? That could mean big fines from a tax perspective for a corporation. You don't want that. From an individual situation, you don't want your employees stuck at a border somewhere where they can't get home or where it's going to take a while or they're scared. So it's just setting up that foundation of mobility processes so that that doesn't happen. Or if something does come up, you know how to deal with it.
Okay, so now we're at the breaking point here of mobility is a business and it's not a clerk's job. It takes
Absolutely.
executive thinking to be well, to be you and not a clerk.
We're new best friends. Yes. So I do think a lot of companies feel like mobility is an expense and it's administrative. There are administrative elements, but mobility is strategic. And if you can do it right, then it can help with your talent management, who you're hiring. You may have talent within your company on an internal mobility standpoint where you can use that talent in another place within your company and not have to go to the expense of sourcing and interviewing and ramping up new talent. So there is again, we're connectors. I see a lot of companies putting global mobility in their talent acquisition departments. I wrote a post about this the other day, and recruiting and talent acquisition and mobility are great partners and they work really well together. But if you look at most mobility programs, about 10% of what they support is new hire from recruiting. The rest of what we do is employees after the hire, so more in that HR business partner space.
So
So,
the smart people bring you in, you meaning the mobility expert,
yeah,
it's a business management role, not a clerk's job, as I just said. It is
yeah,
from the get-go, from searching, recruitment, assessment, and then
assessment's big. Yeah.
L&D, and then positioning, and then deploying them. You should be in them up front in every bucket, not
We think so.
not later.
I think that's a really great point that you make, Ed. Um, a really successful place where I've seen mobility fit in organizations is in a COE or a center of excellence. And when you position, if you have a big enough program to position your global mobility department in a COE, then they are brought into those M&A discussions. They are brought into talent mobility discussions and internal mobility discussions. So we as mobility professionals are acting in a strategic way and not in an administrative and sometimes cleaning up messes because we weren't involved in the beginning. And what else that can do is help save cost. Like we can come in on the assessments and call out different things. For example, in the flex and remote working world, we had an entity in Ireland and we had an entity in France. So during COVID, a lot of employees wanted to go back to their home country of France. So if you look at that on um, just a level of compensation, it looked like the compensation in France was a little bit less expensive. So a manager might say, hey, this is great. We have an entity, the person has the right to work. I have no problem. But when we did a total cost analysis, we found out that the social taxes in France were an additional 40,000 euros. So there's a lot of hidden cost that your global mobility team can help you identify potentially when brought into those discussions early and when acting strategically and not administratively.
Boy, there's a lot. So let's finally talk about supporting yourself doing this kind of consultancy work.
Yeah,
Um, how do you get in front of people? Certainly, this program and its distribution
sure.
will be a help, but still, you've got to be marketing yourself.
Absolutely. I think LinkedIn is helpful. I got my last consulting at the AI thing, at the AI company from LinkedIn. So I think that is a helpful space. For me, I'm lucky that I have 20 plus years of contacts, and this is a relationship business. And I've really
Right.
tried to build solid and positive relationships and not close any of those doors. And so I have a lot of my friends and peers in the industry talking to their clients who might need someone like me to come in. Um, you promoting us, which is very appreciative. And yeah, just calling in on my really large network, right? Um, and just making the ask to say, hey, if you need, here are the things that I can do, and making sure that you have a business plan in place and knowing what your rates and what your value is. I think where I'm seeing, I've gotten a little bit more traction lately, but it's more in the full-time employee space, and it's been in lower level roles. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm not really wanting to go back to a job that I did 15 or 20 years ago. I want to use all that experience and help these up and coming programs.
Interesting. Well, thank you, Rebecca Stevens, for your time and all
Thank
this
you.
education, this information. Now's the time to talk about how people can reach you.
Well, they can reach me on my LinkedIn at Rebecca Stevens. They can also reach out to me on my very long Gmail address. It is Rebecca Wilson Stevens, and that's Stevens with the PH at gmail.com. So I'd love to hear from people.
Great. And thank you for being on Global TV Talk Show with me. I really appreciate you.
Really appreciate you, Ed. Thank you.
Thank you. Come back again.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye. This is Ed signing off in San Diego, and that's Rebecca Stevens in Austin. Thank you.